Had to own and build and maintain a power system. Well, if you run buses, you don't have to maintain the track or the overhead wire, you don't have to plow the street, and the city maintains the road for you.
After years of mounting losses, the St. Paul end of the interurban line shut down in 1953 and the Minneapolis portion in 1954. While there is reason to believe that the streetcar's demise was hastened by the collusion among public officials and bus manufacturers, it's hard to imagine how the streetcar could have turned a profit in the face of mounting competition from private automobiles. All those cars created a lot of congestion, prompting public officials to begin planning a new freeway that would connect the downtowns and tie into the new interstate highway system. The engineers favored a route just south of University, but George Harold, a former St. Paul city planner, opposed it.
Harold, the planner for the city, was adamant that it should go north along the railroad track and not go along the University corridor. He just thought it was going to divide all the residential areas and fragment the city, cut the capital off from downtown. And he was absolutely right. Everything he said was true, but he lost the argument. When the freeway came, they were looking for the cheapest land and the most direct route. And the cheapest land and most direct route was south of University.
Many neighborhoods would lose some of their housing because of the freeway. Prospect Park lost more than 100 homes, but the Rondo neighborhood lost everything.
When I was a child, it was the center of the African-American community. There was a lot of businesses there.
When I-94 came through and took out the Rondo neighborhood, what it particularly took out was the black-owned business district. And so it wasn't just a matter of taking out a lot of houses or just a matter of dividing the neighborhood in half, but it was also, on top of that, a matter of taking out this essential heart of the community.
Imagine being about 6, 7, and somebody trying to describe to you why your house is being torn down so that a road that takes up a whole block wide could be built. I mean, I recall not even believing it.
That route for I-94 was selected in part because they were going to wipe out St. Paul's ghetto. Didn't wipe out a ghetto, it never was a ghetto.
It was a very traumatic event in my life. I had a number of friends around our house, and you're just kind of bonding with them, and we were uprooted by the freeway coming through.
During the 1960s, urban economic development had everything to do with demolition and clearance.
Although it was a mixed-race neighborhood, Rondo was really the center of the African-American community, and it was a place where people knew each other.
You know, it was a friendly neighborhood. It was a village.
Not only did we know when each other was getting a new bicycle, but everybody knew when somebody was getting a new pair of shoes.
It was really close-knit. Everybody did know, almost everybody. So it was a very safe, very self-contained neighborhood. Whatever you wanted, it was there.
It's a pretty clear case where the civic leaders did not act responsibly, and their prejudice created issues that we're still dealing with in St. Paul, and in Minneapolis, too.
We had kind of a bubble that was burst in the name of progress, and probably in the name of integration as well, by some definition. And when that bubble was burst, instead of that community being so much greater and embellished because of progress, we lost a lot.
The opening of Interstate 94 ushered in a challenging period for University Avenue. The freeway succeeded in reducing the drive time between St. Paul and Minneapolis and diverted the Highway 12 through traffic that formerly flowed through the University corridor. But it also made it easier for people to avoid University Avenue altogether.
There's no question that the freeway killed the commercial corridor. But it wasn't just that freeway. It was the freeways that took people out to the suburban shopping centers.
Freeways made it easy for manufacturing plants, movie theaters, stores, and restaurants to move to the suburbs. Fancy new shopping malls with acres of free parking had become the destination of choice. Anticipating the new freeway, local developers built their own version of a suburban mall right in the heart of the Midway.
It was a suburban shopping center lined up on University Avenue rather than on a freeway. So you had to get off 94 and fiddle around and get in there. Everybody was all excited about Midway Shopping Center. Oh, what a great idea this was, how we're going to save the community. And looking back, I don't have a better idea for that space, but it clearly didn't work.
Building a suburban mall in the inner city may not have been the best idea, but that didn't mean that University wasn't friendly to the car culture. On the contrary, it had embraced the auto ever since Willys Overland and Ford set up their assembly plants in the mid-teens. New car dealers like the Owens Motor Company started opening up around 1920. By the mid-40s, there were more than a dozen new car dealers on the street, making University a mecca for car buyers.
That was probably the highlight of my childhood. Is every September the new models would roll out, and it was a big fanfare. The cars were brought in on transports with covers on them so people couldn't see the new model years. They'd have food and hors d'oeuvres, and you got to look at all the new cars, and it was a pretty exciting time, especially when you're a young kid.
You could almost set your calendar to when the new cars would be coming out in fall, and University Avenue was the center of the universe for car buyers back then.
Mixed in among the car dealers were the kinds of places that drivers needed: tire and parts stores, service stations, used car lots, and of course, drive-ins. Everyone from kids to cops enjoyed the drive-ins.
I had a double life back then. I liked cars even back when I was younger, and when I wasn't on duty in uniform, I was cruising. You'd pull in, you'd circle 2 or 3 times to check out who was there. You'd find a spot to back in. You'd order your hamburger and your malt, and you'd sit there for an hour and watch all the cars. Maybe there was a little drag racing on University Avenue once in a while. It was just very simple, good, clean fun.
Car dealers remained one of the big attractions on University well into the 90s, but one by one they packed up and relocated to the suburbs, leaving behind empty showrooms and parking lots that few people wanted.
These were big users of land. So we're not talking about ma and pa stores here. We're talking, Midway Ford. And so big pieces of land opened up, and they've been hard to fill.
Other businesses had also moved out or closed up. Lexington Ballpark closed in 1956. The Criterion burned in 1978, and the Prom was demolished in 1987. The last remaining movie theater, the Faust, had become the notorious Faust because of the porn films it started showing in the 1970s. But it hadn't always been that way.
When I was in high school, the neighbor and I would walk all the way up to University and Dale Street to the Faust Theater. We would pay 15 cents and watch Laurel and Hardy all afternoon.
It was a place where our parents could let us go by ourselves. It was a family movie theater, and we frequented that theater a lot.
We would go to the Faust show every Sunday and sit there from noon to 6 o'clock and see our 3 movies. And then we would go home.
Then businesses began to change, and I believe that's what happened with the Faust.
These people seized an opportunity to buy inexpensive real estate on a major street in St. Paul, and it drastically changed the nature of that intersection.
Then they had a pornographic shop across the street.
That's when an influx of crime, prostitution, drugs, dealing started just happening.
You'd hear the stories of women who would be catching the bus and get propositioned because they were standing on the corner.
The University Dale was a depressing, offending element in the community, in the neighborhood.
Houses were being robbed. And I'm talking about on the north side of University as well. People and the residents got sick and tired of being sick and tired.
And the reason why my mom got involved is because one day we woke up and it was John had been stabbed.
And Bill Wilson, city council person, might have been president at that time, led the way.
The more people complained about this, the more I came to realize that it's just not going to stop. It has to be stopped. So what we did was focused on nonviolent direct action. And so I said, I'm going to start this as one person. So I took a sign and stood on the corner of Dale University, one sign at a time. And eventually there were more signs.
Some of the ladies got some cardboard out and some sticks and marched up and down saying they're not going to take it no more.
And eventually people gathered and people would honk their horns and go by.
And take down the license plate numbers of Johns and the whole 9 yards.
Local businesses also came on board since the illicit activity was driving their customers away.
Western State Bank was a very, very strong supporter. Bill Sands, I respected, then still respect. He stood up and said, you're absolutely right, that unless we change this, then this avenue is going to go downhill. And so he became a supporter, and he spoke to other businesses and said, look, get behind this thing. Let's make this happen. Let's change. We can do this.
And they formed something called the University Avenue Development Corporation, hired a staff person, and I think that kind of started the grassroots level to bring to the attention of public officials. This is nonsense. It's just not a good thing to be going on in this city.
City officials were sympathetic, but their hands were tied because the theaters were operating within the law.
The city did something quite rare. They contracted with a private realtor to make a deal with the owners of those theaters.
The saga finally ended with a dramatic finale on March 6, 1989.
This is the 5 p.m. report.
And the notorious Faust Theater in St. Paul will close its doors in exactly 2 hours. But today, the battle to close it spilled out into the streets.
It all began just before the noon hour when community leaders and neighbors gathered for a kind of victory celebration. While some were ripping down the theater's closeout advertisements, a bucket of dirty water was poured out onto the group from a window, soaking KSTP photographer John Elliott and putting his camera out of commission.
That camera's on, it's going to be busted right here.
And one of them was hitting him with a billy club in the back of the head.
What happened here today was an angry end to a controversial business. So controversial that the city of St. Paul has agreed to pay $1.8 million to close this business down. Today, attorneys for the Faust walked out of city offices with this $1.8 million check, a check which guarantees the Faust will not reopen in St. Paul again, but makes no promises the adult business won't operate in another Minnesota city.
There was all kind of ideas what could be done on a redevelopment basis, but quite honestly, the life of the Faust Theater was well past its time. It came down to just leveling the building. So there was vacant land there for, of course, many years. The big investments would have to wait.
I think it's fair to say that without the neighborhoods and the church-based organizations pressing upon mayors and city council people, we would not be where we are today, looking ahead with hope, but rather we would have been ignored and people would have left. But they haven't left. They've stayed and made it better.
The demise of the adult entertainment district at University and Dale was a hard-fought victory for the community. But it took almost 20 years of continued work to complete the turnaround. When the Rondo Community Library finally opened on the site of the old Faust Theater in 2006, the future suddenly looked a little brighter.
What a wonderful turnaround from where we were. And the community actually reclaimed the space that had been taken from them for so many years by places like the Faust and Flick. So it was a wonderful, wonderful compliment to that corner and to the community for all the work they've done, that they in turn could get a library. And once you have a library, you have not only your history, you also have your future.
The community really embraces the library, and every morning when I drive by or I'm around, there's a line out the door waiting for the library to open. When I'm in the library, it's packed with people. It's such a positive, fun, vibrant place to be.
To think of the people activity and the learning, the human development, and the interaction occurring in the very corner, which was a deadening, really ugly place before.
The new library was a great success, and it offered a glimmer of hope to everyone who had chosen to stay in the neighborhood and fight for its revival. 3 years later, they finally realized their dream of a mixed-use development on the northeast corner, the site of the former strip club.
This has been a long time coming. We could go back 20 years, we could go back 30 years. We could go back a ways to say that a lot of people have been real interested in something happening on this corner, actually happening at this whole intersection.
I don't even want to think about some of the things that happened on this corner. I'm going to think about the things that are going to happen and the wonderful events that are going to happen and the wonderful families are going to be able to be a part of the success story. And I want to thank everyone that's been a partner in this project.
This is how popular this site was for affordable housing for seniors. When we announced to the neighborhood, to the community, that we are now open for receiving applications, we filled up in 24 hours.
Frogtown Square is an important development, not just for Frogtown, but for this whole kind of community around it.
The progress of this community, a library is over there, you know, and now this new development, Frogtown Square, beautiful senior citizens upstairs. And down here is just a little strip mall, and it's wonderful.
Places like the Ronald M. Hubb Center for Lifelong Learning, Episcopal Homes, and Gordon Parks High School reflected a new commitment to the avenue by local foundations, nonprofits, and educational institutions. But the most profound changes were already underway, and they weren't the result of any conscious planning by people up and down the street. They came from thousands of miles away.
I'm actually Hmong from Laos.
I am Greek.
I'm from Ethiopia.
I was born in central Vietnam.
We came to the U.S. in 1976.
My dad and myself are from Hidalgo in Mexico.
We left Vietnam in 75, a week before the fall of Saigon. My husband thinks I am a good cook. So when we saw the International Mall, you know, they have a space. And even by that time, this area, the Frogtown, is terrible. Nobody would like to finance for a restaurant. And so we just want to lease that space to make it living. Then we thought that, you know, if our family working hard, we may survive. My parents, my kids, my husband, myself, and my uncle, we all work with no pay, you know, so we can survive. And then after that, the words of mouth, you know, and then we got more and more customers. Yeah.
University Avenue has always been a home for immigrants, starting with Northern European immigrants and the influx of German and Polish immigrants to Frogtown, as evidenced by the churches that were constructed there, St. Adalbert's, St. Agnes. The influx of Southeast Asians onto the avenue in the late 80s, mid-80s, helped save that commercial district. The district would not have been saved but for immigration.
University Avenue it's kind of like a stepping stone. Rents are reasonable. It allows people who have dreams or who have ideas to start.
Well, we've been here for 25 years. The reason that we came here, we just driving down University, we saw the building for sale, and we decided, hey, let's buy this building and open up a steakhouse.
The price of the rent is not that high, and we don't want to open the big yet, so we just started with the mall.
All the small storefronts that were largely abandoned by what I call the mainstream retailer were available in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s to rent or to buy at a much cheaper price than anything newer and anything out in the suburbs. So, you know, what our society and our economy had kind of left behind, the newcomers found a home in.
None of the plans that were made called for an ethnic shopping strip. None. Of all the ideas that were put forth, none of them worked anywhere nearly as well as the private sector, taking advantage of the market for land, the changing population in the inner city, the arrival of the Asian immigrant population, all that entrepreneurial spirit.
Before they came in, the avenue was very depressed. It was kind of in a down cycle. And they came in and invested and opened businesses and really brought life back to the avenue.
I came from Ethiopia. I have lost my parent, I believe, in the war in my early 4 or 5 years old. And after that, I was an orphan. And then also war started again, and I lost 2 brothers in the war. And I became a refugee. My business partner, Froweni, she is from Eritrea. She have managed a big restaurant, and she used to be a restaurant owner. I have no idea about restaurant. I love to cook, and I love food, and I love people. And so we always talked about one of these days we will open a restaurant, and it will just be the way we dreamed and the way we envisioned it. And that has been in our mind for a very long time.
Nobody knows exactly how many new businesses have been started along University in the past 30 years, whether their owners are recent immigrants or longtime residents. Most of them started with little more than their own determination, overcoming every obstacle that was put in their way. But now they're facing a different kind of challenge, one they never could have imagined.
Right now that, we're going through the tough time because, of the light rail, the construction, and so customer, they have a hard time to find, even they are very loyal to us. They love to come and support us, but they are confused, with all the construction around here.
Our business has been down about maybe about 50, 60%.
Right now, the business is really slow because the constructions. It's gonna close the street for 5 or 6 months, and that is, I don't think it's really okay, and our income gonna drop a lot.
My family, my kids, and so on, we work a little longer hours with less pay.
Getting people into the shop is really hard, and once you lose that person or lose that customer, if they go somewhere else and found a place that they like, it's 10 times harder to get that person back into your business.
The Central Corridor is one of the biggest construction projects in Minnesota history. For many, it's the realization of an idea that goes back more than 30 years. They see it as the centerpiece of an expanded transit system and a catalyst to stimulate investment, just like the streetcar had done.
The Central Corridor will be the recreation in modern times of the University Avenue streetcar. It links the heart of 2 cities. It joins the university community to the greater Twin City metro area. It will generate economic growth and development in a concentrated area. And it builds on an accepted and successful transit past.
The old streetcar was indeed successful, but building one today is having a much bigger impact on established neighborhoods. Construction has made it difficult to access hundreds of storefronts. Most of the on-street parking has been eliminated, and rising property taxes could force businesses to move.
How many people have actually been to a public meeting related to Central Corridor before? Have they most?
These concerns were debated in countless meetings as planners sought to design an efficient transit system that would also meet the needs of local residents.
Efficiency is a big, big component of this, getting people from point A to point B as efficiently as possible. But you also really have to take local concerns into consideration as well. And I think the residents, particularly along University Avenue, didn't want this to be an express line, didn't want to just facilitate people going from the state capitol to downtown Minneapolis with no stops in between.
The community's collective voice was heard, and 3 additional stops were added to make the light rail more accessible. Foundations, nonprofits, and local government rallied to provide loans and marketing support to help businesses survive. but the challenges remain. A few miles to the west, the picture is already looking brighter. The promise of a revitalized corridor has helped generate millions of dollars in new investment. Episcopal Homes is expanding onto the old Porky's property. Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity is building a new headquarters. The old Twin City Grocer building has found new life as affordable artist lofts, and new apartments are filling up the Chittenden and Eastman Furniture Building. Many companies that have been here for generations have decided there's no reason to go anywhere else. The truth is that nobody can predict how the light rail will change the character of University Avenue, but history offers us a few clues. Since the beginning, University has been shaped by people who are by nature optimistic, resourceful, and resilient. Those qualities can only help today's generation adapt to the changes brought about by the larger community's vision for the future.
Today, the era begins in which we say these cities will come together by growing together in neighborhoods that are livable and walkable and transit-oriented.
I would hope that the same people who live there in the neighborhood today, that they're still there, that they are able to stay in their homes. But I would hope that their homes would be improved, their job prospects would improve, the businesses in the neighborhood would improve.
I'd like to see the growth of small businesses and more folk saying, I've been here 10 years and now with this investment, my business is growing. I'm hiring more people from the community.
I'm just hoping that we're able to be there when the construction's over with and